Well, good afternoon, Bucks, Chester, and Montgomery County applicants. Welcome to your public assistance applicants briefing for Tropical Depression at Ida. Get rolling here. I got about 8 folks are on it. Seems like starting to hold steady, so we'll get going, seeing it's 2 o'clock. Welcome again. I am Chris Evans. I am the director of the Office of Disaster Recovery at Fema with the state. This is a Fema program, public assistance, that we administer. And this is one of the first duties I have after getting the declaration of doing this briefing for you all. So some of you may have had them in past storms, and we did one for COVID. So this one being a flood, it's a little bit different. If you were with us for COVID-19 emergency protective measures, the portal is still pretty much the same. We will talk about that at the end. And if you're new, don't worry. I've never been involved in public assistance, FEMA, PEMA reimbursement. Don't worry, the government is here to help you. All seriousness, that is true. We have PEMA folks and FEMA folks that are set to help you, all applicants, through this whole process of identifying your projects, what's your eligible funding level for eligible work, getting you paid through the grant, and getting you closed out. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is the whole process. 10 o'clock one took about an hour, 40 minutes with the questions and answers that we have at the end. You can ask questions during in the chat room. One of my full-timers, Greg, is monitoring the chat room and will answer your questions. And if you have any that I don't answer by the end, at the end we'll take time as long as it takes to answer any questions that you have. And we'll give as much answer to it as we can. If it's an individual particular, we can get into it at your first private meeting, which we'll have with FEMA down the road, which we'll talk about today. One admin thing outside of the program: the individual assistance for your flooded residents, businesses. That FEMA registration period ends on November 10th. November 10th is the last day right now for registering for FEMA assistance grants, Sba loans. As folks talk to you, and we're going to be messaging today on that out to everybody, is the SBA isn't just for small businesses. They provide low interest rates to homeowners. Many of the counties, we've had SBA-only declarations in the past where we didn't raise to the level of damages for FEMA IA, but we were able to get an SBA. So as many of you know, the SBA is for homeowners along with businesses. What's good for the homeowner to apply is if they get a certain amount of funding through FEMA, and that funding should be covering the cost of a destroyed, damaged furnace and hot water heater. If their basement was flooded and that furnace and hot water heater are shot, FEMA funds should be covering the cost of those replacements. If you have any residents where that's not the case and they've applied, they need to appeal FEMA's decision. Talking with the federal coordinating officer, that is his guidance we've had, because we know there's a few VOADs getting involved trying to buy hot water heaters and furnaces for folks, and FEMA should be covering those costs if in fact the furnace and hot water heater were destroyed. But going to the SBA, if they are turned down for the loan, they can come back to FEMA then for other needs assistance, the ONA program. So as you're having conversations or you're hearing residents or you're at the next meetings and people are talking about that, you can give them some guidance that, you know, if they didn't get made whole, to apply to the SBA. If they get approved, they don't have to take the loan. If they, you know, I don't want any loans, okay, but at least try. If you get turned down, a lot of times fixed income, you know, folks, low income, no income, you have a pretty good chance you're going to get denied, and you can go back to FEMA for more grant funds. The only other is insurance. We'll talk about insurance, how it applies to the public assistance, but just want everybody to know, I don't know how many times talking to your residents, and a lot of them call, write me for help, that they were told by their insurance company carrier, oh, you don't live in a floodplain, so either A, you can't get flood insurance, or B, you don't need it. Well, as we've all doubt, neither of those are true. Any primary residence structure can get flood insurance for the structure and the contents. Carriers, for one reason or another, the cost of the policy is a lot cheaper than if you were in the flood zone. But as we've seen with these past floodings the past couple of years, these localized downpours, there's more homes being flooded that are outside of the flood zone than are in. So that's another message you can help us get out is everyone, all residents can get flood insurance. Okay, well, thank you for that. Moving on to public assistance. This is for the results of Tropical Depression Ida. We're going to go through, if you've snuck ahead in the slides that we put out, hopefully you have the slides. They're there for reference. If this was forwarded to you and from another municipality and you don't have the slides, please contact your county emergency management office, because if they didn't send you the email with the registration and the slides and the other attachments that are important that we'll discuss today, then that probably means you aren't on their radar. You were not in the damage assessment process when we came out, so the county doesn't know you exist or have damages. So please contact your county EMA office to get the slides and the other attachments. We're not a slide reader here. You have them for your reference and future use. We're going to touch on the high points today of things you need, and some things will be repetitive. We'll go over because they're important, and they're things we've seen of issues in the past, and we try and help alleviate issues that you're going to have. This is the process. We've gone through the damage assessment. Thank you to those that participated, that reported damages to your county, and then hosted us when we came around looking at them with the joint assessment with FEMA and PEMA doing this. We now have the declaration, we're doing the briefing, and the rest of the things, a lot of these things we're going to talk about today, and you'll participate in the future. This is requires active participation from our applicants, and I'm going to refer to you today, the political subdivisions, authorities, school districts, and fire departments, EMSs, and other private nonprofits as an applicant today, that you're going to be an applicant to the FEMA program. We're going to get into each one. Who is an eligible applicant? That first request for assistance, if you've been in previous disasters, that was a paper one-pager we passed out when we did these briefings in person. You filled it in during the, giving us two names, primary and an alternate point of contact. We're going to talk about eligibility of the facility on down through, including the ever fun admin forms. Okay, so IDA has been designated, that's 4618, that's the disaster federal number that IDA has, the FEMA. Date it was declared, and your incident period. Incident period isn't when you get the work done. Incident period is where the damages, your costs had to have been incurred. Ida was pretty much the first and second, but we had folks preparing for it during doing emergency protective measures on the 31st. When they knew Ida was coming, people were sandbagging. Applicants were moving stuff out of the lower floors to the higher floors to protect. And then floodwaters were up through the 5th. So that's where the damages to your infrastructure and costs incurred had to have happened. Obviously, work to complete those repairs will take some time to do, and that's fine. Today, we're just talking with Bucks, Chester, and Montgomery. We've got other counties designated also. 7 others are designated with you. They're on a different time frame because their designation came after yours. So we'll be doing a separate briefings for them next week. And then we have 2 more counties that have met their threshold, but have not, just recently, last week. So they have not been designated. They're still being processed through Fema to the White House for designation. And we'll get to them later on. Okay, so your first important thing, and we're going to talk about it, it'll pop up a couple of times here, is your request for public assistance. RPA is the acronym for it that you'll see in the FEMA portal, which we'll talk about a few times. It's an online system that you either already have access to because you're in COVID, so your username, password will work, or if you're brand new, you'll need to get access, create a profile, username, password, and that's at the end of the presentation on how you'll do that. But once you're into the portal, your first task is to submit the request for public assistance. You can see the deadline here of the 7th of November, and there's no anticipated extensions. If we were to have, God forbid, another hurricane or tropical storm that made us all busy and start over again, then we'd have to look at an extension, or a major snowstorm that took our attention away. But again, let's not talk about those things happening. So let's all plan on doing this RPA, and that's any applicant. After watching today, if you believe you are an eligible applicant with eligible costs, you need to have this one-page form filled in the portal by the 7th. It's what the portal will look like as you're going in, after you're in and you're getting to that RPA. Again, screenshots here for you to use as reference. Not going to spend a lot of time on them. So the program, public assistance. This is what it provides funding for. We'll get into what emergency work is, what's permanent restoration. Of interest to you is this is a 75-25. 75% of the funds approved for your project will be paid by FEMA. The other 25 will be paid by the Commonwealth. So that means you will get 100% of your funds reimbursed for your eligible work and the eligible costs. So determine eligibility to get your money and repairs paid for. All 4 of these we're going to touch on. So that bottom one, minimum $33,320. FEMA looks at that as you must have at least that much in costs, eligible costs. Do not get scared away. Stay with us on this. If you think you're below that, go through the application process. Let's get to our first meeting, which we'll describe later on, where we first sit down with PEMA and FEMA and look at your costs and damages to see if something is missing out of there. So don't let the 3320 scare you away, please. So first, you got to be an eligible applicant. And here they are for the public assistance. political subdivisions, authorities, school districts, and private nonprofits, which are private nonprofits are then broken into critical and non-critical, essential, non-essential work, which we will talk about here shortly. So as long as you fall into one of these groups, stay on this and keep listening. If you are a for-profit entity, you are not eligible for this program. But if you wish to stay on listening, feel free. So all the other applicants besides private nonprofits, when you go in, it's probably going to be pretty straightforward going in, getting your RPA in and getting it approved, that you're an eligible applicant. Private nonprofits have a little bit more work to do. As you go in, you'll be required to have your charter, you'll uploaded your copy of your 501c3, proof of ownership of the facility, and showing what your critical service is. Again, it's the critical, non-critical, essential, non-essential PNPs. For your critical service private nonprofits, educational, utilities, EMSs, medicals, you can come to FEMA for all of your related damages and costs that are associated with IDA. Those that are non-critical, which we'll get into showing a list here in a little bit. See if there are, I think it's, I am not advancing. There we go. So at the bottom are the non-critical essential service private nonprofits. If you are one of these, if you have any permanent repairs, if you had damages to your infrastructure, your facility, you must first apply to the SBA for a disaster loan. Their loan process is still open on their website, call in, or if you have an active DRC in your county, they are there and you can go sit down and talk to them. You must apply to them, and if you get approved, then you can use that. If you get disapproved, they turn you down for your loan because you have no means, no real income, no means of repaying the loan, then you can come back to FEMA for those costs for damages to your permanent structures, permanent repairs. If you had any debris removal work at your facility, or you did emergency protective measures to protect things here before the flood, clean up afterwards, those items you can come to FEMA for directly. It's that permanent repair. So you still want to go through the application process because there's a deadline. You want to go in and do your profile, put in your PNP documents. Getting approved as an eligible PNP takes a little longer than a municipality does. FEMA has, the general counsels have to look at all your documents to ensure you are an eligible private nonprofit. So please do not, after the program is over, the portal is open, but please don't start on that until after the program. Then you can go in and start through once you see all the slides and start that process. So eligible applicants must own an eligible facility. That's your bridge, it's your building, it's your cross pipe, your culvert that was damaged by this event in either Bucks, Chester, or Montgomery County. That broken, damaged bridge had to have been a result of the disaster. Your responsibility, and the big thing we'll talk about time and time again, is required permits, procurement, and codes and standards. If you have something that needs a permit to repair, please get with DEP right away. Every declaration, we have a few applicants that get to the end for closeout and FEMA final review of what you did, and we ask for the permits, and lo and behold, the applicant never got a permit to put equipment in the waterway to fix that bridge. And then they're trying to get DEP to give them one in arrears after the fact, which is a very difficult thing for them to do and will take a lot of time till they get to you to do that one. So please, if you talk with your engineers or if you're doing things in-house, get those permits you need. If you're procuring a contractor, please follow your normal procurement process. You're probably not underneath an emergency declaration anymore and probably not covered by any emergency declaration. The Commonwealth's governor's proclamation does not cover local municipalities, with us being a Commonwealth, does not cover you for not having to follow proper procurement. And you have all those forms, handouts in the email when it talks about those things. Not the responsibility of another party. And it's right here, but I didn't really talk about it that much first time this morning, so I got a question. And it typically comes up with a split bridge. 2 townships own the bridge. Who's going to take it? That's going to be, the best thing is for one of you to decide who's going to take responsibility for that bridge if it's a dual ownership. They would be to enter into an MOU with them that they are going to be responsible for the whole thing. They'll get the money, they'll do all the work, they'll get the reimbursement. But other than that, the municipality can't be fixing a ball field that's owned by the Little League organization or a camp that's owned by the Boy Scouts. It's got to be your ownership and your responsibility. All right, I said we have the emergency work and the permanent work. Again, these are just ways FEMA breaks down work. They all have certain things, criteria, time frames. As you can see, the first 2 under emergency work, the debris removal, and the category B, emergency protective measures, which is what the COVID all fell under. You have, unlike in COVID, for this event, you have 6 months or until April 8th to finish up with your debris removal and any emergency protective measures, which probably are all taken care of. About the only thing really that lasts after the event in emergency protective measures is the fire department pumping out basements. Pretty much everything else is done right after that. If you close roads down, did a emergency repair to get the road open, it wasn't a full permanent repair, things like that. Speaking of fire departments, if you had your local fire departments, if you knew they're out doing things for the IDA, please make sure they know of these applicants' briefing in this process. Have them get a hold of the county to get the registration information. We have 2 more tomorrow and 1 on Wednesday evening, so there's plenty of time for them to get signed up. Please get the word out. Then your permanent repairs, that's where you're actually fixing things. Things actually broke in the roads, your water control, sewers, building. Those you have 18 months to complete the work. So we have the date on here for you when your roads have to be repaired by, when buildings have to be repaired, things like that. We'll talk about your Cat Z management costs or your administrative costs later on. There's no time except for at the end for that. That's something you're going to keep track of as you go. Okay, so the costs associated with your repairs must be reasonable, compliant with all your procurement and permitting. Again, permitting. and tied to your approved scope of work. That's something we will talk about besides permitting and procurement. We'll talk about a scope of work a few times today. That is how you define the work that is required to replace that bridge, repair that bridge, replace a pipe, the road. Whatever the damages is, you're going to work with PEMA and FEMA in the near future to describe that and come up with what is needed to make the repairs or the replacements. Again, active participation. Okay, so for your forced account, in-house labor. For your permanent employees and your temporary, we'll work with you during the meeting, but you can request that all of their times and benefits for your permanent employees doing Category A debris removal is eligible. Under those emergency protective measures, it's only that overtime, extra time, non-scheduled time that's eligible, and then under permanent work, all your time and benefits, labor, equipment, materials, which we'll get into, is eligible in permanent work. Again, here for your reference, things we'll discuss more. You know, this makes more important is, okay, I've got work that's already completed and I did it in-house. What do I need to do? Well, start getting those documents together. What employees were on what equipment with what material to fix what, and how was it broken, what was broken, and how did you fix it? So those are all things you can start working on for the future. Along with your employees, you have your equipment. There's a FEMA equipment rate. It's on our website. Once you're into the portal, there's a link there under resources. Where you can get that, where it tells you for the front loader, for the grader, for the grade all, for the dump truck, what size is it, what does it get an hour or mileage. And then any materials. If you're doing fixing things yourself, what did you buy, how much did you buy, how much did it cost, what did you use it for? All things you'll be describing and all things that are eligible to reimburse. Especially, you know, if you got the work already done, hopefully you had pictures before, you got pictures after, and you had what it was, whether you used your in-house or if you contracted it out. You got those invoices, and then how did you contract it will also be important. But you see on the equipment rates, if you use your own equipment, it covers everything. If you rented a piece of equipment, then it's the rental time for its use and the gas also. When you rent a piece of equipment, you're also paying for the gas on that equipment, so that's an extra cost too. So things to start getting the documents together. Okay, so that's all the eligibility things. Again, reference here for you, and we'll be talking about them when we get together with you in your first meeting. We start going over your projects. So the administrative form, we talked about the RPA, Request for Public Assistance, that's in the portal. These next three forms, the PEMA, so FEMA doesn't care about these forms. The PEMA DAP 1, which is your Designation of Agent, your DAP 2, which is your Agreement for Financial Assistance, your grant agreement, and your bank account, which is the next slide. These three forms we need you to get completed. We'll be getting them out to you with your RPA emails. They're on our website here at PEMA under PEMA Recovery Forms. For municipalities, you need to, at your next meeting, if you have time to get it on the agenda, to appoint an agent by resolution. That's going to be your applicant's agent is that one point of contact. That person who we can talk with who has authority to talk for your entity, municipality, has the authority to sign for them, and they're going to be designated that authority. That person who you designate will then sign our agreement for financial assistance, grant agreement. We're now able to e-sign it, electronically sign it. You were with us in the old days, in the beginning of COVID too. That's where we needed that original ink signature on page 6. That signature page is now moved to 7, and we can now do e-signatures. Fema has entered the 21st century. We don't have to worry about wet signatures and getting the originals mailed to us. So we can email them to this, and or at the end you're going to see who your project specialist is and his email that you can send direct to him. But we need you to appoint an agent. The agent will then read the agreement, fill in all the pages here, including the last page, attachment G, with the DUNS information. Somebody will test it, and you'll send it along with your bank account verification form. This is what we use to electronically transfer your funds to you. Once we have an approved funded project from Fema, we can transfer you funds if we have your bank account. Happens every declaration. I always warn about it, but it always happens. In COVID, we had about a dozen applicants, some of them pretty major dollars, that we had the funds from Fema sitting in the account that we have access to transfer out of to the applicant, but we couldn't because the applicant still hadn't given us the designation of agent, the grant agreement, financial assistance, or more importantly, most importantly, what bank account to give it to. It happens every declaration. Let's see if we can break that this time. Question came up last time about designation of agent and the RPA. Two separate things. They can be the same. The designation of agent doesn't have to be in that deadline for the RPA. It's more than that. 45 days from today, we'd like to see them for your, again, for your DAP 1, 2, and your bank account. It's your RPA that you have the 30 days to get done. They can be the same names on there and an alternate, but two separate operations. And again, available on our Fema website under Recovery, Public Assistance, and Forms. That's the admin forms. So starting to get into the program, debris removal. You either had it in the stream around your structure that you've removed, hopefully by now or soon will be. You know how much was taken out and where it was taken to, and then what did it cost? Did you do it in-house, your own equipment, or did you contract it? Do you have that? What gets into the monitoring and documenting is those municipalities that put dumpsters out in the flooded neighborhoods, and or after residents moved all their flood debris from their house out into the public right-of-way along the curb, and because it was in the public right-of-way on the curb, you took the responsibility of getting it picked up for safety concerns. So you have that, is, you know, that you will be, during our discussions, you'll be certifying that it was only flood-related debris that was picked up, either in the dumpsters or at the curb. And you know how much it was, so if you had dumpsters, your contractor should be able to tell you that. And how many loads. If you did it in-house, picking up front loaders and putting it into a dump truck and taking it to the dump, you got the tickets. Or your contractor that went around and picked it all up for you has his tickets. So those will all be things we'll need to know. Some issues on stream debris. Big one is that last bullet. If it's your culvert pipe, your bridge, through the permit to build it, you also have the permit to maintain the opening of that facility, which includes 50 feet upstream, under the structure, through the structure, and 50 feet downstream. If you're going above that, especially getting equipment into the creek to clear out more, you'll need the permits from DEP, but make sure we have pictures. And there are instances. I saw a lot of places, and I talked with some of you when I was out there, we saw a lot of places where the debris was more than 50 feet. And we talked about, hey, go get that permit to show that you had to go outside that 50-foot footprint because it was just so much there, it was a threat to the improved property. A little bit more on woody debris, again, for your reference. So your public assistance project, your project worksheet, or as it's called now in the grants portal, your project application. Learning new terms here. This is what you will work on with FEMA and PEMA to describe what happened, what was damaged, how was it damaged, and then what's it going to take to fix that project scope of work. What is it going to take to repair, clean up, or replace that damaged eligible facility? That's what, so you may find as you're going through this presentation that you're going to go, wow, there's a lot of participation in this, and in your position, you may not have that time, where you're going to find yourself, as many have in the past, delegating this work, participation for your municipality down to another person at your entity, the secretary, the roadmaster. If they're not on this presentation, you're going to delegate after hearing all this today, and that's fine, it happens a lot. Just please ensure they sign up and register and attend one of our future ones. And we're recording these, and we will have them available on our website for viewing later. But it's very important that whoever is actually going to be working alongside PEMA and FEMA developing these projects understand the whole program. And that's to start doing that is to be attending one of these briefings. Again, this guy just keeps talking about scope of work. What's up with that? It is probably the most important thing that if you deviate from what you finally agree to with FEMA, and there's deviations, as many applicants in the past had, even with these warnings, they change or do something different in the scope of work and then come back to us later on looking for more money, and we're not able to help them. So that scope of work, if you do more, your engineer does more, your contractor does something more different than what's said in there, it's highly unlikely we're going to be able to help you. That's why it's important that we work with you to understand it, that it's, the scope of work isn't correct until you tell your FEMA people it's correct. Again, you're going to work with them. Any changes to this scope of work, once it's in there and you click off approved on your project, you're going to put your project in. So you're going to put your work on your project in the portal, and then you're going to tell your project specialist, who actually is, for everybody in these counties, is John, J-O-N, his name and contacts at the end, but you're going to let John know that you need a change in scope of work. Because if you don't get it approved after the project is in and approved, we can't help you on the payment. So you're going to put the project in, You're going to let John know it's in there. He's going to look at it, look everything over, tell you it looks good. Then you're going to hit the submit button. Once you hit the submit button, it goes down the line through the other reviews. And if there's any changes, we cannot send it back to you to fix. We don't have a back button on this thing. So sometimes it entails throwing the whole thing out and starting over. So as you'll hear during your meetings and all, you'll get the project in. Once you think it's set, you'll let John know. He'll look at it, tell you you're good to go. You'll hit the submit. It'll come to him. He'll look at it, hit the submit, and it goes on down the line to Fema. And then it'll come back through the system again for you to look at. Everything, decisions made, especially on your scope, eligibility, second to last bullet is we have 60 days from the decision to appeal the project. So if there's any issues with the project, FEMA's going to issue to you what they call an RFI, a request for information. Once they get the project in the portal from you and they see it, if they've got issues or questions, they'll reach out initially through us to try and get them. If we're not able to get answers quickly, then they'll do an RFI, which will then put you on the clock to respond. And then depending on that information, they may give you a determination memo of what they've determined as eligible or not eligible. Those are things we can appeal. But through communications, open communications through the whole process, we shouldn't have to get to that part where we're issuing requests for information or determination memos and having to appeal. Hopefully, we'll all work together. Sometimes it happens, and we'll deal with those as we do. Within the scope of work, it's going to talk about any hazard mitigation. We'll talk about that a little bit. That's what can I do to this structure facility to maybe keep it from getting damaged, destroyed in the future. Upsizing pipes, adding riprap around wing walls, things like that. If you have a building structure that's damaged, equipment that could have had insurance, FEMA's going to want to know about it. Was it insured? Did you collect on it? What's your deductible? Those will all be things we'll be discussing with you on that. We've already touched on this. Nothing verbal. Make sure you have all changes in writing. Again, that's something you'll work with your PEMA person. Your PEMA contact, John, is your primary, and you have your FEMA, but you'll get with John that, hey, you know, I don't like this scope of work as you're being developed, or, hey, I've just talked to the engineer and we've decided that what we talked about, how we're going to fix that bridge isn't going to work. We've got to change things. And then you can have those discussions with FEMA as to why, and then work on getting them approved. So the costs, you know, everybody's worried, what's the cost of that? What's the cost? Your scope of work, which you then will use for your bid specs, basically, is what's going to drive your eligible costs. Defining all those pieces you need to fix the bridge, what's needed what's going to drive the cost. So making sure that scope is right will then make sure your identified costs are right also. Second bullet there, last bullet, Davis, even though it's a federal grant, Davis-Bacon federal prevailing wage does not apply. The state prevailing wage may. Engineering, the engineer costs are eligible in the project. It's part of it. Be a separate line item that you'll work with. Based on, at the end, it'll be based on what were the actual costs. Again, and we've seen it before. That's why we have it here. When we get that scope of work and they go off and do the bid specs, And the bid specs, he changes them because in his professional opinion, what was discussed isn't how he wants to replace that bridge or repair it. That will then get you into trouble with funding. And that's the first thing we're going to look at when you come back and say your costs are running higher than what was approved in the project, is we're going to look at, you know, what is the scope of work and what was ultimately put out in the bid specs, and are they apples and apples or apples and oranges? So again, things to keep in contact with us on. In engineering's work, you want to break it down, that last bullet with the 3 sub-bullets. That's how you want to have your engineer keep track of their costs for you, because that's how you'll turn them in. They all are based on a percentage of your project, so we want them all broken down these ways. So the one negative slide, what aren't we going to pay for? What we can't pay for. Again, Fema's program, we administer it. We're here as your advocate, but we also know the program. So we want to make sure you're well aware of where you can or will get into trouble. That 1-lane bridge that was destroyed, that's all we're going to pay to put back. You may not think that's reasonable, doesn't make common sense, especially with the building going on and in the area. Maybe you were already talking about needing a 2-lane bridge. Well, here's your chance. You can do a 2-lane bridge, but we're only paying for 1 lane and the costs associated with it. So we're going to have to do some prorating. Again, conversations to have with us at the beginning, at that first sit-down meeting, which we'll talk about here. And let us know, because that's what we call an improved project, which you'll see mentioned later too, is you're taking, you know, the whole program is put it back the way it was. Now we can do some improvements with codes and standards or mitigation, adding riprap, improving that pipe one size, you know, things we can do, but we can't pay for that 2nd lane or add pedestrian lanes and lights that weren't there in the past. All things we've seen in the past. They were scoped out to replace the 1-lane bridge, and the applicant came back in, had a 2-lane bridge with pedestrian walkways protected with railings on each side and nice ornamental antique lights. And we're quite surprised when their $500,000 bridge and we wouldn't pay the $2.5 million price tag that they came in back with. There was no way FEMA could under the program. They never let us know. They had no permissions or anything. And a few others. Unfortunately, private nonprofits that are recreational, we've had that before. So if it's unfortunate for the Little League, if the Little League owns the ball field that was washed out, it's not a municipal ball field, we can't help the Little League. The private nonprofit that owns the rail trails, we can't help them replace those rail trails. If it's county or municipal-owned rail trail, we can do it. And then a few other things at the bottom. Okay, all projects are important. FEMA has a way of, we have a small project and large project designations. You had those categories of work. Those categories in work and costs are going to be set. And if they fall under $132,800, we consider them a small project. Important to you, but small by a monetary that changes every year. And it also dictates as to how fast, what part of the money for that $100,000 bridge we can get to you quickly, and how much paperwork at the end we're going to need. So we'll talk about these here for a couple of slides. All your funding, as I said, is going to be electronically transferred. If we advance funds, in other words, if you have a project that is written, you haven't done the work yet, and we're going to be writing it on estimates, and we advance the funds to you, which would be for small projects, 75% of the funds we advance to you. They have to be deposited into an interest-bearing account, and anything over 500 has to be returned to FEMA. Highly unlikely with the amount of money involved and time frame of getting work, but it's things I need to tell you about. Okay, so small projects. The minimum, as we said, $3,320. Again, don't let that scare you off. We want to talk to you about that, because many times we've been able to, after discussion, find other eligible costs work for applicants. Been times we haven't. You know, if they've got 2,000, that's all they got is 2,000. We can't find anything else, then unfortunately we can't help them. But we might be able to find another funding source someplace else. Small projects, as you'll find when you work with your project specialist, John, at the end, the amount of documents at closeout, closing the grant, is a lot less than if you have a large project, which is over that 132,800. On small projects, FEMA requires, once your project is approved and obligated, funded, that's where the funds show up in an account we have with FEMA. They transfer the money to that account. Our Treasury is then able to move that invoice to you out of that account to pay you. We have to, on your small projects, get you the federal share as soon as possible after we receive notification it's there. The other 25 we will get to you at grant closeout once all your work is done, all your bills are paid. So on this slide, if you have a project, if you're over 70,000 in full amount, we're going to need to see at the end a lot more documentation. Again, we'll work with you then on that, but we're going to need to see actual costs for all your work, because your state share then is going to be based on what you still need. In small projects we see, and we'll talk about it, the overruns in a little bit, where FEMA writes the project for $100,000, 75% of that is theirs, and the project only comes in at $70,000. So you've made $5,000 already from FEMA. You did all the work, paid all your bills, just unit costs came in, contractor costs came in, you did it in-house, but you made $5,000 already from the feds. You're not going to get any, there's no state share then to give you. You've already been made whole through the federal share. There may be, in other cases, where you need less than the 25 from the state to be made whole. Again, things will work with at the end with you. But if you do make money on the federal side, you can keep it. But you must also let us know what you're doing, what other good things. You're going to now go out, you made $5,000, so you're going to go out and buy more riprap to put around that structure. You're going to do something to harden a facility. Again, things will work with you at the end. Uh-oh. Stand by technical difficulties. Hey, we're back. Okay, so we talked about the underrun, large projects. Okay, large projects, those that have a value over the 132.8. That's going to be a replacement of your bridges, big culverts, if you had a long section of roads that were destroyed, and for some of you, some building flooding. You're going to, whether the work is completed or work to be completed, maybe a combination of both. Those will all be detailed in your project worksheet and scope of work. That'll generate then what your costs are. Once that project is in and approved by Fema, you'll see it in the portal that was approved, but we're going to also send you a letter with a lot of things required for that large project. How you can draw down funds. You know, as you incur costs replacing that bridge, you're going to have costs. The engineer's going to be sending you some bills after they've done the design and spec and bidding process. A contractor may want some up front. You have the ability with an approved project worksheet with an incurred cost, in other words, an invoice or timesheets or something if you've done work in-house, to draw down funds as you incur costs. We're not going to settle up with you on the full amount and the 25% state share until the end, until all the work is done, the bridge is completed, you've paid all your bills, then you'll submit for final reimbursement. Again, we'll work with you on this, but you will on your large projects and your smalls have that 25 you need to put up first to get reimbursed from us. So you do have a stake in the game for a little while, but we will make you whole at the end, I promise. Ineligible work. Quarterly reports, the large projects shows your status as you're going along, that you're not running into any hiccups. You know, quarterly you're going to be reporting, and we'll let you know. It's a one-pager. We'll let you know when that starts, about a year from now, when you'll have to start reporting to us for work not completed on a large project. But we want to see quarterly that you're moving forward. You know, the first quarter report's probably, you know, you're 20% done. The second quarter, you're 40% done, then 80% done. We want to see forward progress. If we're not seeing forward progress or you make comments on there, that's going to get you a call from John. You know, if it's a $200,000 bridge and you have that your current costs are $600,000, he's going to be calling to find out why. Things stall you out, but there's a time. Keep in mind, the 18 months to get the work done. So we want to make sure everything is staying on schedule moving forward, and then see when, if it's not moving forward, how can we help out? You're foreseeing a cost overrun. Again, another reason to get a hold of John. We see this typically, so you're going to scope out that bridge repair, culvert, whatever it is, based on estimated costs, because you haven't started the work yet and you got to do design spec and put it out to bid, award it and all that. But say that, you know, if that project, once you put it out to bid and your lowest bid that you accept is 10% or greater than your approved amount, or you see your costs have gone up for any reason from your contractor, then you need to get a hold of us so we can work with you to see why. First thing, again, we're going to look at is, okay, you had this scope of work. What did your engineer bid? Let's see the bid specs. Are they apples and apples? As long as they are, and it's just a matter of cost of doing business was higher than that, what it was estimated to be, we can then work with FEMA and you and get that additional funds approved for your project. This is only for your larges, that we get them approved so that money is there for you to draw on. Again, change in project, get a hold of John. You're not sure what to do, get a hold of John. Okay, talked a little bit earlier about the CAT-Z. Now we found out that the hiccups in the program here being done is me just not clicking the mouse, but moving the mouse on the table. When I move the mouse around, I'm messing up the sequence. So that going back, we mentioned it on your cost, the CAT-Z. That is your management cost. Again, we'll go over it during your meetings and in the portal, but it's the cost, eligible cost for eligible work you're doing, your in-house people are doing to administer or work on this program. So it's just a simple spreadsheet. Who did what, when, where, and why, that you spent an hour and 40 minutes on an applicant's briefing on this date and time. That can be your first entry. You can go back to time spent on your damage assessment. Also, if you were out or you had your roadmaster or emergency manager out for a couple hours doing damage assessments, they can be added to that spreadsheet. It's that administrative work, when you have your meetings with Fema, keeping track of that time. When you're having anything to do administratively with your project. Engineering costs will be written into the project itself, but this is just your management costs. Then you have up to 5%. It's based on actual costs. At the end, we'll get the spreadsheet from you and do this project, but it's up to 5% of your total project amount. Again, we'll be going over this with you at your first meeting with PEMA and FEMA, which is the last bullet here, called the recovery scoping meeting, or in the old days, we called it the kickoff meeting. And just simple spreadsheet. Some special considerations, permitting on your projects, make sure you're keeping up with. Historic, if it's greater than 50 years old, if you're in the floodplain, do you have insurance? Again, mitigation on the site. Something for you to think about before your meeting with FEMA and PEMA is what could you do at that site? If you've already replaced that 18-inch pipe with an 18-inch pipe, the cross pipe under the road, we can't be carrying it up. But if there was an 18 and you went ahead and put a 24 in, that's fine. Talk about it. We can, we'll price out the 18 and add in the extra for upsizing one. And that's probably a lot that we do is upsizing cross pipes, those pipes that only convey rainwater from one side of the road to the other. If it's not raining, it's dry. When it rains, it gets wet. Versus the culvert, which is conveying water all the time. It has a standard flow. Site here for endangered species, snail darters and bog turtles. Okay, well, we've talked about this a few times. Mitigation we can do in public assistance. We'll also be talking to some of you, the municipalities and counties, Tom Hughes and his group on the 404 mitigation. That's where we look to see if we can elevate a house out of the floodplain, or can we move it back out of the floodplain, or as last results, do we then get you the funds to buy those properties that have been repetitively damaged and buy them out, demo them, and turn that property into green space forever. That's a whole different program that will be up and running. We've talked to a lot of residents already about it, a lot of municipalities already about it, telling them to get a hold of their municipality if they're interested in that. But on this one is different. This is where we try and prevent, we've talked about that cross pipe, armoring the wing walls, things like that. Again, bring it up. Let's talk about it at your recovery scoping meeting. Insurance, if you have it, we need to know about it. If your structure that was damaged was in the flood zone, special flood hazard area, 100-year flood plain, FEMA's going to treat it as if it did have insurance, even if you didn't. Again, things we'll get into. But if you have equipment, a facility that's outside the floodplain and wasn't insured because you had been told you couldn't get it for whatever reason, you're going to be required by FEMA to go and obtain that flood insurance for that facility and maintain it also in the future. We'll make you whole, we'll fix it. If you're outside the floodplain, it was damaged, we can fix it if you weren't insured. But we're going to have you go get insurance for the next time. If you're in the flood zone and you didn't have flood insurance, FEMA is going to treat it as if you did. So there'll be some prorating there. Again, we'll get into the particulars if and when we need to. And that obtain and maintain, second bullet, is if you're, again, if your damages are over 5,000. So you had an uninsured loss over 5,000 to repair, replace. We're going to have you go get it for the next time. Other types of projects. We touched on the improved. That was taking that one lane. You're deciding you're going to take it to a 2-lane and you're going to pay for that second lane and anything else. But FEMA is going to participate in the 1 lane, the mobilization, the erosion control, all those other little things. It'll be the same. But you're going to pay the difference of adding that second lane. So that same 1-lane bridge got destroyed. PennDOT's got a nice 2-lane bridge, or your neighborhood municipality right upstream has a nice 2-lane bridge. Very few people use that 1-laner. It's destroyed, so you don't have to worry about its historic significance. You're thinking you're not going to replace it. You can do that. You can make it safe and secure. In other words, you got to have to make sure no one's going to be able to drive around your barricades, around that pile of sand, and thinking there's still a bridge there, like we saw some people doing this time around. But we don't have to replace that bridge. You can do an alternate project. We'll still price it out. You'll still work with FEMA and PEMA to come up with the full cost of replacing that bridge. You know, it may be that opening when you do your hydrology report, which is very important if you're doing any replacement of any facilities in the waterway, pipe or bridge, that, again, permitting with DEP, you've got to do that hydrology. So you do that, so in a normal project, if you do that hydrology report and that report shows that what you had there was undersized, we can pay for upgrading to the minimal size required by that hydrology report. That's where DEP actually comes in handy and good, is that hydrology report may cause you to put a larger structure in, a bigger opening. Maybe you're going from a squash pipe to a box culvert. FEMA can pay for that, and PEMA, if it's required by a result. Again, we're going with the smallest opening required by the hydrology. But we'll price out that bridge, putting it back to what it was. You can then abandon it and use those funds to do something else better in your community, your facility. You can't use it for labor costs. So a lot of times we've bought new tractors, as we have here. One of the best times, I think, was when the borough secretary found out she was getting air conditioning in the borough building because they weren't replacing the bridge, and they were going to use those funds to put in air conditioning that she never had at the borough building. So there's many things you can do with it. Again, something we can talk about when you sit down with us the first time. Something to think about now. Again, codes and standards, applying, enforced during the event. The newest one of what you all got, if you got the email from the county with this registration, there was a bunch of other attachments, and there's a couple of them in there that talked about consensus-based codes and standards. First bullet, again, talk about it during your briefing, but you, the applicant, must identify any applicable code standards that would apply to that structure you're repairing or replacing. Lots of information in there. Again, engineer can help you. We can work with you as you bring it up at your recovery scoping meeting. Couple more bullets on it, the consensus base. This is all new recently from FEMA, putting it on the applicant to identify and follow and upload all those things into the portal. Procurement, again, there's no approving it. You must just follow your normal standards. You've got in that email from the county with the registration information on procurement. Last bullet, you can do a web search, FEMA PDAT. We'll get you information on federal procurement under CFR 200. Grant closeout. Again, something we'll work with you, John will work with you at the end, depending on the type of project you have, small project, large project, the amount of funding you had, all things he will work with you, get you the forms you need to sign to get this, your projects closed out, grant closed out, and your final disbursement. Again, we talked about the 60-day timeline on any decision FEMA has you don't like. Again, very, very rare we have to do official appeals in Pennsylvania. There's been a couple of times in the past. Sometimes we were successful, sometimes once we were not. Hopefully we don't get that. That's part of the open communications between you and John and FEMA is we have clear understanding of what's eligible, what's not, and if not, explaining why it's not. But sometimes we disagree with FEMA and we'll take it to the appeals process, and John is there to help you with that if you need to. Some more remembers now here, finishing up the program slides, and we'll talk about the portal. Grants portal, using Firefox, Chrome, or Edge. Internet Explorer is still out there on a lot of tabletops, desktops, no longer supported by Microsoft, and is not going to work well with the grants portal. That's the #1 thing when you go and look at if you're having issues, or, hey, I used to see this in the portal and I don't see that now. It may be because you're in Internet Explorer. Opened it up. So make sure it's Firefox, Chrome, or Edge. Okay, so FEMA's grants portal, where all the work will be done. It's all visual. Everybody gets to, you get to see all your work you're doing, what FEMA's doing with it, where's the project. If they've got any questions, your request for informations will be in there. Everything you need to know about your project. You'll be uploading documents to this. So if you already have the account from COVID, prior disaster 4408 was not for your 3 counties. That was a storm back in 2018. So some of you may have been in for COVID, already have the account, so you can follow applicants that already have an account. Ways of getting, again, this is all getting you into that RPA. So if you have account, you don't have to do your setup. You're already set up and you can navigate to the RPA. If you're new, then you've got to follow the directions on potential applicants. And we'll have some slides here for you. Again, this whole initial thing is getting in, getting your profile set up, getting you into the portal if you're not already, to get the RPA submitted before the deadline. Everything else can wait after that and get your project is your timetable. But that RPA you need to have in in 30 days. And for private nonprofits, it's just a matter of getting all those documents in. As long as you've got everything in and it's in FEMA's hands, then it's okay. So if you're new, you can see here, first-time users, click down the bottom. I said users, I didn't say losers. Getting laughed at here. I thought it might have slurred that there. There are some YouTubes on it. Links are here. We'll have some other training in the future on projects via YouTube. We'll do the live with a FEMA trainer and then video them, record them for later. We'll message that out to you when we do it. But for now, it's getting in for the RPA. Just got to click through here. Again, these slides are here. You can use as your reference when you go to get in after this presentation or tomorrow, hopefully not now. Make sure you're using the link too. We've had a couple of people today trying to get in and they're going to other FEMA grant sites. They weren't using the grants portal site. So make sure you're seeing grants portal there in anything you bring up, not NeoGov. We're going to need 2 points of contact for the RPA, primary, secondary. That way, if the line goes dead with the primary, we have a backup to get to find out what's happening. Using your, so this is the screen you're looking to get to. Click here for your RPA. Again, talking on your email address, if you've got that generic one. That way, no matter what, life happens, people move. We probably, out of COVID, had over 100 applicants change from beginning through it, which means the applicant, we've got to create new contacts. They have to watch the briefing, but at least with those applicants that had generic emails, they were still receiving correspondence from us. And then that's what, made them aware that they had to get a hold of us that something had changed. Resource tab, once you're in, lots of good resources there on the portal. Some of the roles. So you've heard me talking, you have John as your FEMA project officer. John's going to be here through the whole time, from beginning to end, till that grant closes out. FEMA will have their program delivery manager with you through project obligation. Once it's been obligated and in through the system, you'll fully transition to John. But during the whole process up to that, you'll be working with John and your program delivery manager, basically your FEMA customer service manager, project manager. He's the FEMA person to help you get through the process. We'll talk about that in a little bit here, how they're going to contact you. You'll have FEMA site inspectors. If you identify during your meeting that you have work to be completed, that you haven't, you have some work done, but you still have some work to do, or you still have all your work to do, then you're going to get a site inspector visit. They're going to set up an appointment with you, come out for a day or two, whatever it takes, to go around with you and look at these sites, take measurements, pictures, kind of like we did during the damage assessment. If it's work completed, then we'll use your information you have already on that. Again, after your RPA gets approved, about 7 days, you'll get your FEMA program delivery manager, PDMG, will get a hold of you, and they'll set up some calls and meetings with you. That first call, they're going to be talking, it's just real high level, exploratory call. We'll talk to it about a little bit, another slide or two. But some of the terms is essential elements of the project, location, descriptions, dimensions, things like that, all things they'll work with you on. So recovery scope meeting, it's really your first real, it used to be a sit down, we did in person, we'll probably do it virtually. Have no problems though if FEMA and PEMA folks want to schedule them out in the field and go do them in person. Lots time consuming doing them if we do them virtually over a WebEx, Teams. But it'll be your first private sit down with us to go over. FEMA will probably do what they call exploratory calls, just a high level introduction, PDMG to you and PEMA. And just kind of get the idea of what type of projects you're going to be working on. That exploratory call to see if there's anything really technical you're going to be doing. We're going to have a few very technical projects from some applicants during this event. So when we have these calls, we want to make sure we have the right people on them to assist you in your project. So having that exploratory call first will give them an idea. They're not going to get down in the weeds on it like we will during this scoping meeting, but at least we'll have the right people on this call with you so we can give you all the help, support that we can. Some more requirements for the meeting. Some more on the terminologies, the elements. We talked about RFIs, requests for information, out of your project if they have any questions. Again, slides, go ahead. I'm not going to read all here for your reference here as you get going. Some more of the terminologies. Expectations. Like I said, it's a very interactive, so you may already, like we talked earlier, you may already be deciding that this is way too much time for you to be involved in. That's fine. You're going to delegate this down to somebody else at your facility. That's fine. Just make sure they get signed up for another briefing so they understand, because communication is very important. Active participation, making the timelines, all our expectations of our applicants. Again, maintaining contact with us on any issues you have. What you can expect from us. We're gonna, again, PEMA is your advocate for this. We're there to make sure everybody plays well in the sandbox, that projects keep moving forward, that we're capturing all eligible work, and that all eligible costs are being approved. We're taking care of resolving any problems that you have, and that's also what your FEMA PDMG will do. There is no past disaster documents for your 3 counties. I know a lot of you are still open, working, doing projects in COVID. That's fine. That doesn't pertain to this because that's kind of a unique thing. But you don't have any of the old flooding ones, so we'll move on. John Scripta is your project specialist for Bucks, Chester, and Montgomery. He only has these 3 counties for this event. He has other counties for the western counties for COVID. He has western Pennsylvania for COVID, but he's got you 3 for this event. And then the other 9 will be split out amongst my other project specialists. So John's direct number, if he doesn't answer, leave him a voicemail, please. Who you are, municipality, your county, callback number. In his voicemail, though, that we'll send a media file to his Outlook. So no matter where he's at, he can get your message. And his email. 800 number here, if you for some reason haven't gotten a hold of John hasn't returned his calls to you within a couple of days, please call the 800 number. because probably John's missing somewhere or homesick, and that's why he hasn't returned your call, and we can at least find out what's up and how we can help you. Again, communications, we're not, the saying goes, you know, we're not making wine. Things aren't going to get better with age. Let's take care of them right away here as we move through this. Here's these required forms again. Again, e-signatures. You know, we have a 45 days. That's all really dependent on whether you can get on your, I know everybody's had this October's, or you probably have had your October meeting already for your municipality. So it's going to be the next one if you can get on it. Municipalities have to do the resolution. If you're a school district, private nonprofit, probably your school district superintendent has the ability to designate without the board, as does the president of your PNP organization. They probably can designate the agent. You can't designate yourself, though. Municipalities, they can if they got the other signatures on the designation, but the borough mayor can't designate himself the agent and only be the only one signing for it. Bank account. Can't transfer funds without bank account. Some other forms that the agent will be signing through the process. Again, DAP 9, request for reimbursement. That's that large project where you draw down funds. Some more timelines for you. Talks about that unique email address if you have it. This is a public grant subject to right to know requests, Freedom of Information Act, and the required document retention period. What you're required at your end, we keep for 7 years after the close of the project. So be careful about any personal information that you provide that isn't from the entity. So we've been doing questions and answers, I'm guessing, in the chat room with Greg while we were going on. So if you have a question that wasn't answered or you have yet or you haven't seen it, now is the time. We'll let John get the system set up so he can see them here at my table. We're in our area unluxurious conference room at Fema. He's going to read them out and I'll give you the answers. Or maybe we'll let Russ answer them too. No one's gotten to hear from Russ today. Okay, so we'll get John going here. Again, communication, really, can't stress that. Don't be bashful. If you have issues come up, things to do, things that are bothering you with this, get a hold of John and get it resolved right away. Do we have the question?
We do.
We have a question.
Our first question comes from Keith. Aren't proper procurement procedures legally bypassed with a disaster declaration from a municipality?
Yes, good question, if it's still in effect. At this point, this far past the declaration, your local may not be in effect anymore, and then it comes down to, with FEMA, is the emergency nature of it having to, if you're doing procurement for a bridge replacement, you know, if you did the procurement contract for an emergency repair, that would probably fall under it, but they're probably going to question you if you're not planning on letting a contract for another 6 months. Do you get design spec and all, how that falls under your declaration. And keep in mind, this being a Commonwealth, the governor's proclamation, although just recently extended, does not trickle down to the municipal level. When a governor has a proclamation, that is something required that he has to do if we're going to ask for a declaration like this. But then his proclamation only relieves state agencies from their procurement. Again, the finer points of being an active Commonwealth. Thank you, Keith, for the question.
And a follow-up question.
Check with your solicitor, probably your best answer.
A follow-up question from Keith. Do you have a template for the DAP 1 resolutions?
We're going to get those out when we get the mailing list. It's on our website with an example and the resolution. DAP 1 itself is there in a fillable PDF. All the forms are in there under recovery, top right, Fema site recovery, public assistance forms.
The next question comes from Caroline. The slideshow that was sent to me has the RPA deadline as 11/8, not 11/7. Which one is correct? That was an issue on our end. There was a mix-up with the date with 31 days in October. It is 11/7, not 11/8. And we'll be having the updated slides go out here in the next day or so, and they'll be uploaded on the website.
Yeah, we're just going to put them up on the website. And thank you for that. We forgot to mention that in the last brief that we had the slip sitting here in front of us, so which slides to mention had changed, and we did not. So you have that. Also, slide 47 talks about, should be version 4, the Papa G, Public Assistance Policy Procedure Guide, or as they call it, the Papa G. We're now under version 4 of it, is the one you want to make sure you're using. But thank you for that, Carolyn. Yep, we had that change this morning, pointed to us that it's Sunday it's due, not Monday. Do we have another question?
We do. Next question comes in from Doug. For portal access, will there be multiple users allowed for each applicant?
Yes. Yep, you'll define that in your profile. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So you could have when you sign up, there's going to be your primary and your alternate. They're both going to have logins to the portal. And then if you need to have additional staff, you could let us know, and we'll be able to walk you through how to add additional staff members to the portal. But you'll be able to add them on your own. We'll just help you walk through it. So our next question comes from Caroline as well. Where would I find a form to document the Category Z expenses?
Just a simple spreadsheet, I said. You can make up. The question came up, so maybe we'll work on getting one and put it up on the website. But just a simple spreadsheet. You can make it, who did what, when, where. Does FEMA, I see one with FEMA had. Did FEMA have a spreadsheet for Z? I thought I'd seen something a while back. We'll have to find out, and when you have that sit down, because they're going to talk about it in that recovery scoping meeting, everybody will have not everybody, I think everybody will get an exploratory call probably too. Everybody will have that recovery scoping meeting, the old kickoff meeting. It's your one-on-one time with FEMA. They'll talk about it then, so we'll see about, just keep track of it somehow now. We'll talk with FEMA and see if we can get something uploaded in the portal there in the resources if there isn't already that you can use to fill in.
Okay. So the next question comes from Keith. Just try creating a profile on the FEMA site. It says it makes you click a specific disaster. IDA isn't an option, only COVID-19. That's something we're going to have to double check with, Keith. If you're in Grants portal, there was some issues today that may be a result of it, or you could be on a different site possibly like FEMA Go. What you really want to be looking for is Grants portal. If you are in Grants portal and you're still not seeing it, then it could be an issue with their site. We'll double check with that.
Oh, we have Greg coming in, and he says?
Banner at the top of the page.
Okay, come on.
Submit RPA. The banner at the top of the page in red. It says submit RPA.
Okay, at the top of the page, you're going to click in the banner in red that says submit RPA.
Are you seeing that, Keith?
Oh, he needs a profile first.
Ah,
yes. So now that we're going to have to double check with.
Yeah, they were having it. So, yeah, welcome to our world. Imagine that. Issues with a online portal. There are times where there's issues with it. we ran into this numerous times during COVID and being able to say how, there's no way of messaging out to everybody that there's having an issue.
Mine went down this morning. It was up for a while. I don't know if it's up now.
It's up now.
Okay, next question.
Next question comes from Ray. There is no way infrastructure can be designed, bid, DEP permits obtained, and built in 18 months. How is that being handled?
Case by case, and yes, they do, and we've done them. Depending on the size of it, it can be done. Where things happen beyond your control, there is the ability for time extensions, which we'll get into applicant specific down the road with applicants. But yes, we've done, PennDOT has even, believe it or not, PennDOT has even replaced bridges. So it can be, but when things come up out of your control, like DEP not responding, or environmental issues, or you've got a trout stream and you can only be in it certain times and that holds you up, there are provisions for time extensions, of which that disaster 2018, the biggest reason for time extension was COVID. Everything shut down. So there are provisions, only when it's things beyond your control, and you'll discuss those as need be with your project specialist, John, down the road.
All right, next question comes from Nathaniel. I see the DAP forms on the Fema website. Is the RPA form on the website as well, or is that only in the portal?
Only in the portal, as we said. That's only, you might be thinking the old days where we had that one pager. We used to collect at the applicant's briefing in person, but no, everything, that form is now in the portal as we, how to get to it is all there in the slides.
Next question comes from Mark. Water and sewer authorities serving multiple communities, or serving several communities, and a sewer line along creek, and creek moved and the creek surrounded a manhole. We need to stabilize a long portion of the stream and bank. Could this potentially be eligible?
Could potentially. Again, you get that as long, if you are the authority in you're your own political subdivision authority taxing, you're not a department of a township, then it doesn't matter that it crosses municipal lines as long as they're all within the designated counties of Bucks, Chester, Montgomery. But other than that, no, there'll be, again, working on permits with DEP. There's no, probably not going to let you realign the creek, but if we need to do mitigation on the line or the manholes, we've done that before, encased them in concrete so that they can withstand damages. Again, things to talk about at the scoping meeting.
And that's our final question.
Everything is, you're doing what needs to be done, not dependent on FEMA Commonwealth participation. Reality is, hey, we have no funds, so we can't do this work without FEMA. Yes, we understand that. But what would you be doing if FEMA wasn't here? So again, but keeping in mind, putting it back the way it was, but you need to do what you need to do. If you're moving forward on projects and there's parts of it that are improvements other than what was there, they're not going to be able to participate in, we'll just identify that and move on with the eligible aspects. Again, keeping in mind, having pictures, documenting, having the proper permits that required you to do the work will all be things that'll cover you. In other words, we'll catch up. Don't wait on us to do your work. Start doing the work, follow the guidelines, follow all the necessary policies and procedures, but don't wait on, if you can, don't wait on till the check comes in from FEMA to get going. Get going now on the work. And if you have work completed, that's fine. That'll be the first projects you'll work on with FEMA and FEMA after your scoping meeting. start gathering up all those supported documents, what it is you did, damage descriptions, you know, quantities you used, invoices, contracts, whatever. Start pulling all that stuff together so you can get it uploaded into the system, and that'll be a quick project to get in, approved, and funded.
No other questions?
No other, okay, we'll give them a couple seconds here. Again, if you received an email from your neighborhood municipality, you did not receive the email from the county, please ensure that you contact the county and let them know you exist and you had damages. All the municipalities that reported, municipalities, school districts, authorities, private nonprofits that reported their damages to the county right after Ida and participated in the damage assessments, that's how the counties knew you existed and were able to send you this information on the page with the invite or the registration information and the other procurement and codes and standards and environmental historic issue green paper. So if you haven't talked to the county that you exist, please do. Just because you didn't participate in getting the declaration and the damage assessment does not preclude you from participating in this program. It's just we will be servicing those that did participate, those that did report their damages, those that did secure this declaration. We'll be servicing them, and then we will be taking care of getting in touch with you through the process. Any other questions pop up during that?
Questions.
No? Okay. I guess we're done. Thank you very much for participating. You only need to attend one of these, so you don't have to attend tomorrow's or Wednesday nights. If you've got somebody that's going to be participating, though, please have them sign up. Stay in touch with John on issues. Other than that, class dismissed. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Be well. Bye-bye.